Sometimes real life is stranger than fiction. This is a reality trip with Fama Jr.
Hello, everybody. This is Fama Jr. You are listening to Reality Trip. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I've got... Who's this person?
Are you forgetting who I am?
No.
Is it because you haven't seen me in 4 days?
No, I was just being facetious. By the way, if you guys are listening to us and you hear trucks backing up in the background with the beeping, that's not our fault. There's people doing recycling, whatever, over here. So,
Right.
Anyways, thank you for joining us today. I've got my co-host Mesa Fama. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
And if this is the first time you guys are joining us today for the podcast, whether you're listening or you're watching, you can find us on multiple different channels. So you can find us on YouTube for the rebroadcast. So if this is your first time, thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe. If you're here on Facebook, on our Facebook channel, which is, let me see here, Facebook.com/realitytripper. That's where we're doing the live broadcast right now. So if you're watching this live, this is where we're at. And if you want to catch our live broadcast later on in the future, this is where we're at. And then you guys can leave comments, suggestions, anything on our Facebook channel. But check us out, Facebook.com/realitytripper. And if you guys got any questions, you want to hit us up in the comment section. We will go back through the comments throughout the show and respond to them there. So,
Yep.
anyways. And then if you're on iTunes or Stitcher for the audio rebroadcast, you can subscribe to us there. So, anyways, I'm Fama Jr. This is my wife, Mesa. Those are our tags if you guys want to check us out over there. So,
Yeah.
anyways, usually at the beginning of the show, I try to do a little bit of housekeeping, which is about our film that we have coming out soon. So we are actually making an official announcement. I don't know if we did this in the last podcast or not, but
We did.
we're actually going to release our new film. We have a new documentary film called Reasons to Believe, and we're actually going to be releasing it September 11th,
Yay.
2017. So if you're listening to this broadcast, we're going to be releasing it online to Amazon and Vimeo On Demand. Those are the two platforms we're starting out with first. That'll be September 11th. But if you want to find out more about our film, about the psychology of belief, you can check out our website at reasonstobelievefilm.com. We have all the information on the film, the screenings, everything that's going on there, and where you can probably purchase or rent the video when it comes out. And then real quick, we have a new announcement for Portland. September 9th, 2017, we're going to be doing a screening in Portland, Oregon, sponsored by the Center for Inquiry. We're going to be doing a screening and a Q&A with Peter Boghossian, who's in the film. We'll be joining him in Oregon at Fifth Avenue Cinema. This will actually be our last live screening that we have with the film before we release it to the public. So there may not be any more screenings after this. This might be our very last chance for you guys to see it live, engage in the conversation. So if you're in the Oregon area, make sure you come and check it out. You can buy tickets from our screenings page, or if you're on our Facebook page, Reasons to Believe Film, you can purchase the tickets there. We are still planning on screening in California.
Yes.
We're still trying to set that up. We're
Yeah.
talking with some people out there because we really want to do a screening with Michael Shermer and everybody in the film. So we're still trying to set that up. So stay tuned for that. We're trying to hopefully do that with June or July.
July. Most
Yeah.
likely July, not June. We won't be doing anything in June.
Yeah, so we're gonna let people know about that. So, anyways, that's us. That's our film. Go check that out. Whatever. So,
Speaking of films, that's the topic of our show today.
yeah. So I figured, we were talking about documentaries, and I thought, excuse me, I thought we could talk about documentaries for a minute. Because, the show is called Reality Trip, and most people don't realize that the opening sequence that says sometimes real life is stranger than fiction is based off of being a documentary filmmaker. That's why we said that. And so I really believe, I love documentary films. We're obviously documentary filmmakers, and I've been passionate about documentary films for a very long time. And so I thought, why don't we talk about documentary films that are really, really cool, that are really, really interesting. And if you guys have any documentary films that you want to talk about, leave it in the comments, because I'm always interested in new and exciting documentaries that are either out or that have been out that maybe I haven't seen. So if you guys got anything that you've seen that you enjoy watching, please let us know, because I really want to check them out if they're worth watching. So, anyways, but I figured I'd start off with a couple of documentaries that have influenced me. And if you haven't been following some of the stuff that I've been doing or some of the interviews I've been in, I usually pretty much say the same ones over and over, even though I've seen tons and tons of documentaries.
Yes.
I really have. I've seen so many of them. And obviously that's why I wanted to be a filmmaker myself, is I was just very, very passionate about documentary films. So, but I wanted to start off with one of my all-time favorite documentary films before we do any of them, and that is Errol Morris's Fog of War. To me, I've seen a lot of documentaries by this time. Actually, I'm going to try to see if I can bring this up on the screen real quick. To me, I've seen many documentaries even before I saw this one, and I think to me it is one of the most powerful documentaries I've ever seen my entire life. It's basically about Robert McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War era. And basically it's an interview with him and basically the mistakes and the lessons that they've learned in the Vietnam War. And it's just such a powerful story of history, the lessons we've learned, looking back in hindsight and what we should be learning from history. And I think the reason why I really love this film is when you really learn about your past and making mistakes and fixing them. And that's what I really, really loved about it. And it was such a powerful, powerful documentary. It was really, I already liked a lot of documentaries before I saw this one, but this documentary is really what made me just fall in love with documentaries. This was the documentary that just made me be like, I want to go and tell stories. I want to go out there and see the world and tell stories. So for me, Fog of War by Errol Morris is definitely something that I would definitely recommend for people out there. So
I agree.
And even though I don't consider myself a political filmmaker, which I know some people say, well, I am, because there's a lot of politics interweaved into my film. I mean, I guess you can kind of say I don't feel like politics is my main focus. I know I talk about it sometimes, but I feel like psychology is really my main focus for now. I could be a completely different filmmaker, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But right now, psychology is really what I love about it. But that's one of my all-time favorite films, and if you get a chance, please go watch it. It's just such an amazing, amazing documentary.
Along those same lines, I would say Oliver Stone's documentary, which is like, is it 10 parts long or 12 parts? It's a massive film, and it's all about our history. It's what's it called? The Untold History of the United States, which is amazing. If you're, wanting to know why we are the way that we are and how we came to be in our political climate, this is one of the best films I think I've ever seen. And it just has a lot of in-depth knowledge to be gained from it. It's an amazing piece.
I think that's one thing that's interesting about history is that we're never really taught a lot of this stuff in school. And I don't think I was very interested in history when I was in school. So when you really learn about where your society or your country or your whatever it is you're doing, where it came from, and the lessons that, again, we're not learning, and the psychological behaviors of how we thought back then, and how a lot of it's actually similar now. I mean, a lot of things have changed now, but when you're really figuring out how the way the world actually works and how it was then, and then you realize, wow, we're making those same mistakes. I think that's what really makes great filmmaking great. And I love history films and history documentaries that are able to do that. And yeah, I think this is a great one too. So. Let's see, what's another one? So I'm just thinking of things off the top of my head that I really, really, really loved. Let's see, another one that I really, really liked was one of my other favorite filmmakers is Alex Gibney. He's literally, I think, a genius filmmaker. I love his films. Obviously, I'll talk about the Scientology one later because that is one of my favorite ones too.
Yeah.
But one of the first ones that I saw by Alex, I believe it's one of the first ones I saw, but definitely the one that stands out the most for me is Enron's Smartest Guys in the Room.
Oh, totally. Yes.
And this is such a great, great, great documentary film. Let me see if I could pull this up here at all. I guess here's a clip. Maybe I could play this while we're talking about it. So I don't know if I think this is just a clip, which is fine. So anyways, Enron's Smartest Guys in the Room. This is actually about Enron and the collapse of Enron and people who came into power and bullshitted everybody into thinking that they had this great company and they were making all this money, and yet it was a big Ponzi scheme. It was one of the. I think what I really like about this is it blew the cover on bullshit. And it was one of the first films that I saw that really makes you question what people think, especially when they're bullshitting people. And that's what I really loved about this. Ironically, the film mentions the Milgram experiment in it. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of the Milgram experiment. And this came out back in the mid 2000s. So
Yeah.
So to me, I really, really love this film. If you guys ever get a chance, it's an in-depth look at Enron, the bullshit, scheme that they had, and Useful Idiots. I love that. But it's a really, really great film, and it is one of the first films I can remember people being called out on bullshit.
Yeah.
Over, and I really love films that do that, and it just goes to show just how we're being scammed by people and how people will follow people blindly. And be bullshitted by people, kind of like the society we live in today with our fucking president. People just blindly following people off a fucking cliff. And
Right.
that's what I really love about this film is that it really just shows it wasn't just people from the top. It was how all these other people just went along and just went along with this game and went along with the scheme in order to protect this image of the company. And how it all came apart and stuff. So I really recommend that film. So
I agree.
You have any others?
The Jinx.
Oh yeah, that one. I don't know if I could pull this up online, but yeah.
I don't know if you'll be able to either, but holy cow, did that one knock my socks off in terms of what is that one considered? Investigative documentary filmmaking? Yeah,
investigative documentary. And this I probably think is one of the best documentaries in the last. I don't know. I can't seem to pull up the.
That's just a kind of a lame clip.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing here, but
maybe what if you just? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're trying to get away with trying to show it in a roundabout way.
I'll show it on the screen, but you can tell what they did here was really weird. They have trees falling in the background with whatever. Anyways.
Yeah.
But I thought this was a great, and I'm not going to give away the film at the end, but you need to watch this film. And if you love investigative documentaries, you'll love this. And I love it when there's this, when you're so surprised about how it's going to turn out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just, it's such again, it just goes to show how a lot of people with money in this country can get away with things that other people can't do in this country. And I don't know. I agree. I think that's an amazing documentary. So, let me see. So,
I was going to say, one thing I'd like to say about us discussing documentaries and things like that, it goes to show the power of storytelling. A lot of people, when you bring up, when we talk about how much we love to watch documentaries, I will sometimes see people kind of roll their eyes and be like, oh my God, how can you watch? It's so boring. They're so boring. And I'm like, but they're not. You gain so much, and it's all based on the art of storytelling. I think that, maybe back, when documentaries were first being made, they might have been a little bit dry and things like that. But now they're just as good as most narrative films, to me, anyway.
I think they're better. Honestly, I love documentaries. I don't know how anybody thinks a documentary is boring. I guess I've seen boring documentaries, but to me, I really do believe real life is way more stranger than fiction. Don't get me wrong. I love Star Wars. I love The Matrix. I definitely love The Matrix and Star Wars. But but to me, to knowing that something really actually happened in real life, to me,
these are real people.
Now, to be fair, and I try to tell this to people too, as a filmmaker, you also have to remember that documentaries are not completely real life either. A lot of times they're fabricated, and I want to get into that later because I want to talk about some films I used to really like that I may not. I don't know. I may have a different opinion on now, but things that influenced me before. But I love documentaries, and I'm seriously a documentary addict. So another one that's really, really good that I liked that, again, was just a powerful documentary was called Capturing the Freedmen'S. And this documentary is so mind-blowing. So basically, to sum up the documentary, this guy started off making a documentary about a guy who I guess does clown acts, or he's like a circus. He was just trying to follow circus clown acts or something to do with this clown. Anyways, make a long story short, it turns out it ends up becoming an investigation of a man who was charged with pedophilia. And all these backstories.
That's why I don't like clowns.
It's just crazy. And it's just a really powerful documentary. And what I really love about documentaries like this is that they when they start off as one thing and then they become something else and you don't know where it's going to go. And I think that's the one thing that I love about documentaries is you start off with one type of idea and you don't know where that idea is going to actually lead you. I guarantee most filmmakers will tell you that they'll start off with one idea.
Yeah.
And they said when they finished the film, it was nothing like the original idea that they had. And that's the same thing with me, both with A Virus Called Fear and Reasons to Believe. The way that I saw the film originally and the way that I thought the film was going to end up in the end was not the way that I thought it was actually going to end up being. But when it takes such a drastic turn like that documentary does, where it starts off as a completely different subject and then ends up as something completely different. I love that. I'm like that to me has got to be an exciting thing. So that's one of my favorites. So any others?
Mea Culpa is a great one.
Is that the Alex Gibney one?
I think that's another Alex Gibney one. That one, I get emotional when I think about that one. I can't, it's really hard for me to talk about because of what happens to these guys. They end up going to a school for the deaf as children. And while they're there, they are taken advantage of by the priests. It's another one of those where the church, covers it up and these guys are raped as little kids and just I don't know if I want to give the whole thing away, but they end up going and trying to confront their attacker, I guess is how I would put it. But it's probably hands down one of the best docs I've seen also. And just, again, the power behind it, the reenactments themselves, I think are just, they blow me away. And they put you right there. You feel everything that these guys are feeling. It's
beautifully shot, too.
It is. It's
looking
gorgeous.
at it. I remember
It's
watching
so
it. It's
beautiful.
It's shot so well. It's made very well.
Yeah.
And it's just well crafted. Alex Gibney is just such a great filmmaker and
great storyteller. But yeah, I guess maybe it's the imagery of it that really kind of hits home and puts you there with them as they're telling the story and going through the history. And it's just, like I said, when I talk about it, when I think about it, every time I think about this doc, it left a very lasting impact and just makes me super emotional.
Yeah, no, it's a great film. Another one I watch a lot of skeptic and atheist documentaries too, which there isn't as many as you think, and I think that's why there needs to be more of them. But definitely the one that I love the most is Jesus Camp. And if you guys haven't seen Jesus Camp, go and watch it. Some of these films are online that you can see on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
A lot of them you can rent. So what? Rent it. Help support these filmmakers because
totally.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you're tired of watching crap, stop buying crap. Stop buying these stupid-ass sequels and superhero movies that come out of Hollywood. There's a lot of great independent filmmakers out there doing some great work. Go out there and fucking support them, for fuck's sake. Anyways, let me see if I could pull up this is the trailer for Jesus Camp. But then I remember I saw this one like 10 years ago, well over 10 years ago, and this is such a powerful documentary of kind of like a militaristic camp for kids for Christians.
Indoctrination.
It's an indoctrination camp, and these kids get indoctrinated into the Bible and becoming soldiers for God. And it's kind of like the American, what is it, schools that they have in Islam, when like a jihadist camp.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what this is.
And they just brainwash these kids into believing some shit, man. And it's just like, I consider this movie child abuse. To have kids act and be in this way, and to indoctrinate them in ways to make them think this way. And some of these kids are growing up to still act, and like that kid right there, he's grown up to he's a crazy.
Oh, the one with the tail.
Yeah,
right?
he's still on YouTube doing crazy ass videos and whatever. But these kids, man, like this is literally child abuse at its finest when it comes to indoctrination. So, and if you really want to know how belief affects people, this is a great film to watching. And kids, little fucking kids here. Having to deal with this shit, But to me, I remember how mad that film made me when I first saw it. I was like, this is bullshit.
Yep.
This is bullshit.
Well, they emotionally manipulate them. So what we really should look at is, okay, so these kids, they don't hold the emotional maturity of an adult, right? But yet they're throwing them into these situations and they're manipulating their emotional responses.
Exactly.
Which is why so many kids will just kind of go along with whatever the adults are doing because they don't know any better yet. They don't know to think any better yet.
Which is why people are always judging people and telling your kids about religion when they're not even old enough to think.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like it is a form of child abuse because you're indoctrinating and putting fear in kids unnecessarily. And it's not just Christianity, it's also Islam. Yeah. And people don't think that. I'm not everybody's this way, and I know that. I don't want to judge an entire group.
Right.
But for the ones that do this, they need to be called out on their bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of my favorite films that does that. You got any others?
Gosh, we've seen so many. There was a great HBO doc that I watched not too long ago, and it was about that guy who pulled the gun on those kids in the parking lot and shot him.
Oh, I never saw that.
I think it was called 3 Minutes or something. It was that was another one that was like a super powerful doc because I think the guy ended up getting let off or something. He shoots these kids and maybe it's not 3 minutes. I'd have to go back now and watch. Okay, but that was a good one. What's another good one that we saw?
I think another great one is Inside Job.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. It's narrated by Matt Damon. It's by Christopher, what's his name? Oh, Charles Ferguson. Yeah, this one is a really great. I'm sure most people probably have seen this, but basically this is about the financial collapse that happened in 2008 and how the bankers took advantage of our political system. And again, just great in-depth documentary filmmaking, doing stuff that the media is not doing. That's what I really love about it is when they go into places that wouldn't go. I'm going to pull this up on screen real quick, see if you guys can see some of it. But again, this is Inside Job. And,
so good.
And like to me, I think that what I really like about it too is that this is a complicated issue when it talks to the financial markets and that's a very complicated subject. These guys kind of break it down for you to kind of understand it and to understand what actually happened, and it makes sense to understanding how our system collapsed in 2008 and how these bankers got away with this shit and how people are dealing with it and how it affected the foreclosure market and so I really like that film a lot. So I recommend it. Inside Job. So
yes, that's another really good one.
Do you have any others or?
There was that one that we watched that I don't know. I think Errol Morris always makes ones about. Is it Errol Morris or Werner Herzog that I'm thinking of that makes ones about crazy people? Like
they
what
both
was
do.
that? I know. What was that one lady? That was a really good doc too.
Oh yeah, that was Errol Morris, but I forgot the name of the document. I think it was called Tabloid.
Yeah, that's it. Where she was famous for a while. Was that the premise behind it? And I can't remember now.
Well, she was famous because she got into this scandal with a Mormon.
Yeah.
Into a tabloid. So here, let me pull this up.
That's it. So. That's what it was. That one, yeah. That was so great.
She got into she had this sex scandal with a Mormon, and it got all over the papers and whatever. And it's a crazy. Errol Morris has always bring these unique characters to his stories, and that's why I really like his films. So, but this one, I thought this was a really good film too.
Was that? Oh, she talks about getting kidnapped and being held for ransom, so that the guy that she has the affair with, doesn't he like she's trying to drag him into it to rescue her or something. I don't know. It was such a crazy story. And it went launched in the UK and then came over to the US or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was weird. It was great though.
Yeah, that one's called Tabloid.
Yeah.
That's a really great film too.
Yep.
So maybe I'll go into some documentaries that influenced me, but I may not agree with them anymore because there's a lot of those too. Because I went down, most people know that I used to be completely different in my thoughts about the world and how I saw the world. And a lot of that had to do with watching documentary films. And unfortunately, I went down a path that probably wasn't always the correct one. So let me start off with the documentary that started it really all for me. And I do admire him as a filmmaker. I think he's a good filmmaker, even though I think he exaggerates the truth sometimes. So I'm not here to criticize him as a filmmaker. I think as a filmmaker, I think he's a good filmmaker. I really do. And I'm not saying he's always wrong, but I think that there's times he stretches the truth and it's like, I don't really think, there's some arguments you can look at where he says something and it's not that. But anyways, let me look it up real quick. But anyways, I would say this is the film for me, good or bad, that started it all for me. And it is Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11. This is the film to me that before, I don't really think that I was into documentaries before I watched this film. Like I watched some. I mean, there was this one that I watched, with Tupac that died, in Vegas. Yeah. Most of you guys don't know. We were both born and raised in Las Vegas, so it was interesting to watch Tupac because he died in the same town that we were in. Ironically, Tupac died in the same hospital that I was born at.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. So, but anyways, this film for me was the first time I had ever seen really a film that made me change my mind about the world. And if some of you guys follow me, you guys already know the story, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But let me see if I can pull this up real quick. So basically, when I saw this film, I believe that there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I was definitely a supporter of the Iraq War. I definitely had a view of terrorism that was different than what I have now. And really, this was the first time I had ever seen a film. Let me see if I can fast forward past all these, whatever. So this was the first time when someone told me to watch this film that I saw the world in a completely different way. And it really shook me out of what I thought I believed and thought about the world. And I didn't know anything. Literally everything that was in this film, I knew nothing about at the time I saw this. I had no idea. I just thought, okay, well, we're going to eventually find weapons of mass destruction. I totally supported George Bush. I'm not saying I was a big fan of his when he was elected, but I didn't hate him, And I saw this film and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And this is really, honestly, what set me down the path to just asking questions, ironically. So, because I think for like a lot of people, 9/11 made people ask a lot of questions, which I did too. I don't think I really wasn't anti-religious. I didn't really know a lot about Islam. The only person of the Muslim faith that I knew of was Muhammad Ali. I didn't know anything about Islam until 9/11. I probably couldn't tell you the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. And then I saw this film and I was like, okay, something's going on. And I don't know what it was. It just set up this questioning. And I didn't just stop with this film. And I want people to understand that because now I can disagree with a lot of things that are actually in this film. But that took many years later. But for me, going down this rabbit hole made me ask questions about, well, what's actually going on? And then it made me study more about history, made me study more about politics and religion. And when I started to see more and more and asking these questions, that's how I came up with the worldview that I have. But unfortunately, it took me a long time to get to the worldview that I actually have now, which is being a skeptic, being an atheist, being a free thinker.
Right.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about those films that kind of influenced my believer and everything else side.
Sure, we can talk about that.
So, well, I'm not gonna go into that one yet. I'm gonna go into a couple of documentaries that I watched that I don't agree with these anymore, but I'm just talking about films that influenced me when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Okay. So another one, I don't even like pulling this up anymore, but
I know.
But it was one of my favorite films. It was called Loose Change. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this conspiracy theory fucking documentary, which that claims that 9/11 was an inside job.
Yep.
Okay, so let me be clear here, and I want to put this up and be a little bit transparent. I used to actually believe that 9/11 was an inside job. I think it was one of the, out of all the beliefs I've had, and I believed in a lot of things. I used to believe in God. I used to believe in spiritualism. I think this was probably the most profound belief I had as a conspiracy theorist. I truly believe that our government was responsible for, the terrorist attacks that happened on 9/11 and that they were plotting something for the New World Order. And this film right here had something to do with that. Obviously a lot of other, there's tons of 9/11 documentaries that I either watched or have watched. And this one to me made me think that there was all these questions. There was all these, oh, how come the government couldn't explain this? What happened to World Trade Center 7? Blah, blah, blah bullshit, And so this film to me, I would show to a lot of people when I could. I was like, you guys should watch, Loose Change. But anyways, make a long story short, I don't believe this film anymore. In fact, I can't stand this film anymore because how inaccurate it actually is. And I still get people to this day that want to question bullshit and question me on 9/11 and I'm not saying I'm an expert in the 9/11 debunking, but there are really great experts that are out there, including Michael Shermer, who's in our film, who does a great job. And he was one of the first people I listened to that really showcased what happened to World Trade Center 7. Why did the towers actually collapse? And you start to realize, okay, a lot of these claims that they made in these films, these 9/11 conspiracy films, end up being bullshit. The thing is, I think most people, like me, only watched one side of the argument. I don't think back then when I was watching these films, I really questioned it. I thought, well, it's in a documentary. It must be true. It wasn't that I was stupid or dumb. It's just I wanted to see what I wanted to see. And I was like, oh, well, I was wrong about weapons of mass destruction. Maybe it really is a conspiracy kind of shit. But I really believe this. This is what led me to Alex Jones and David Icke and all these New World Order people. And I was really hardcore. Like I was one of those hardcore 9/11 inside job people and stuff. And that's why I bring that up, because I want to be clear that filmmaking is what gave me the worldview that I have. And these are the films that I would watch over and over and over again. And then when I watched that, I'd watch another conspiracy theory one or another New World Order one, or you know what I mean? And so there were so many of these going on around the time that it seemed like, oh, that was a legitimate case, until you started questioning it. And for whatever reason, I just started questioning things more and more and more. I think it's because I started coming across people like Dawkins and Hitchens and Sam Harris, because it was easier for me to watch documentaries and be like, oh yeah, religion's bad or whatever, but for whatever reason, I didn't apply it to my spiritualism. I didn't apply it to conspiracy theories. I didn't apply it. Wow, I can't speak right now. I didn't apply it to these other forms of thinking. And it seemed like, oh, well, the truth was this. And I didn't know how to question things like I do now. And so that's the reason why I bring this film up, because like I said, it was one of the most powerful documentaries that I watched back then. So I'll probably bring up the other one. So
you might as well go there.
So I'm going to bring up a film that to me is, I know this is going to sound a little weird,
no,
but it's actually still one of my favorite films, even though I totally disagree with it now. And ironically, I'm actually friends with one of the directors of this film. So if she's watching, I just want to let you know that I still like this film because of what it meant to me at the time of my journey in my life and what I was looking for in my life. So, but now I when I address it, there's a lot of things I debate that I don't think is actually true. And what's funny is that I do discuss this with the director, and she already knows, and I have a good relationship with her. We're good friends. I respect her as a filmmaker. But this film actually did mean a lot to me when it came out. It really did. In fact, it was the very first film I ever showed you when we first met.
Yep, I know. I remember.
So if you guys have ever seen this one, it is called What the Bleep Do We Know? And I know some people are like, huh? What are you talking about? So let me pull this up real quick. I don't know if this is online or not. I guess it is. Huh. I don't know if this is the extended version or what. So some of you guys have heard this film called What the Bleep Do We Know? And I'll give you the synopsis of it if you've never heard of it. So basically, What the Bleep Do We Know is a film about science and spirituality. So if you are into spirituality, you're really going to love this film because it tries to blend science and spirituality, and it tries to ask questions that might get people to understand a little bit more about what they interpreted to be quantum theory, quantum physics. And, it's basically the premise that, your thoughts create your reality. I mean, it's not a new story, obviously, now, but back then it was pretty groundbreaking. So to me, what I really liked about the film when I watched it back in the day was, for me, I was on a spiritual journey, because back then I used to believe in a lot of spirituality, new age stuff. You know what I mean? I believed in the law of attraction. I believed in other dimensions and other I thought there was a veil to reality, basically. And I thought that, spirituality, Buddhism, even Christianity and Islam were trying to understand the tenets of this existence, and their books would always talk about how there was this other existence beyond our existence that spoke of the actual truth, and that this was a veil being covered, you know. And so to me, I was always trying to figure out what that was. And I listened to people who were on, I listened to stories from people like Terrence McKenna and people like in the psychedelic. When I watched, and that's another documentary I want to bring up actually really quick. I'll do it in a minute. There's another documentary that I really like that I debunk now too. But anyways, but I've been studying spirituality for a very, very long time. You know, I've been studying psychics and tarot cards and, astrology. I've been studying just faith. I've been studying a lot of belief. And for me, when I saw this film back in my 20s, I thought, here's a film that proves what I think is real. Like, it was trying to mix science and spirituality together, and that's what I really loved about it. It was such a powerful film for me, and I really loved it. I really loved how it was created. I loved how they tried to ask big ideas. Yeah, and that's why I still love it, even though I don't agree with it, because it was still one of the first films that made me just come awake and ask questions. I was like, what about science and spirituality? Like, are we understanding the way the world is? And I really thought there was a key there. I thought that if you brought science and spirituality together, you unlock this key to the universe, like who we are, what our meaning and our purpose is to life. You know, it was a path that I really thought I was going down that really meant something to me. Ironically, as I started to go down that path and I started watching other movies like The Secret and The Law of Attraction, and, you know, I would listen to Deepak Chopra. I would listen to Wayne Dyer. I mean, I don't think people realize how much spiritual stuff I would actually listen to, and watching things about quantum physics and reality and the double slit experiment. And, you know, and to me, I thought, okay, and the Fibonacci sequences and how mathematics would explain spirituality. But as I started to go down this path, I think all I wanted to do was be like, okay, well, maybe we're on this scientific path, because I love science. I really do. And that if we could just figure out the science behind the spirituality, we can unlock this key that Buddhism and Islam and all these tenets of what's the Jewish one?
The Kabbalah?
Yeah, the Kabbalah. Like, there was all these signs that there was these codes to life. And you would start looking for codes and patterns and seeking things. And to me, I thought, okay, well, if I just start putting the patterns and the codes together, maybe I could be part of this grander scheme to unlock stuff, you know. And I'd watch films like The Quantum Mind of God, and I watched stuff about UFOs and David Wilcox and all these people. And I was really just trying to dig in deep to really understand it. I wasn't questioning it. I believed it. It wasn't like I was. But what happened was as I started to watch these films and I started really asking the questions about quantum physics, I started really asking the questions about reality and stuff. I think after a while, when you start to ask how you can combine science and spirituality, you're going to come across scientists. And they're going to say things that are going to contradict what you think you believed. And at first I was like, okay, maybe they're wrong. Maybe they don't understand something, you know. But as I kept coming across them more and more and more, I started putting all these patterns together, and I realized this isn't adding up anymore. Like, everything that I thought that I believed about 2012, about psychic abilities, about inner dimensions, or whatever it is I thought I knew, I don't think I was stupid for it. I really thought I was coming up with a logical pattern to understanding it. And I started to realize, as I started asking more and more and more questions, I was like, wow, that doesn't actually add up. And this person has a better explanation for this. And science actually does explain this better. And you really don't have a choice after a while if you're serious about it. And that's why I wonder sometimes if spiritual people are as serious as they think. I think they're searching for truth. I think they're searching for answers. You know, and I think most spiritual people and religious people are good people, even though I give them shit all the time. But I really believe they're good people that believe things that they really haven't questioned. Now, some of them will say that they did. But when I see their responses to how they act and how they react to things, I'm like, well, what are you reading? What are you actually looking at? Did you just look at a couple of articles? Because I did that. I was like, well, I'll watch a couple of videos. But as that seed started to be planted in my head, I started watching more and more documentaries from other people and other scientists that explained why films like The Secret or What the Bleep Do We Know could be wrong. But I give What the Bleep, honestly, and it's not just because I know Betsy. If you're watching, hello. I give it credit for trying to explore new answers. I give it credit for trying to break the boxes, and that's what I try to do. So if I could be like the What the Bleep of the skeptic community, you know, but like try to be different, then that's cool. But again, I disagree with a lot of things that are in the film. I'm very open and vocal about it, but it's still one of my favorite films for the attempt that it tried to do. Hopefully we can still have that same mindset in the world we live in now and still be as excited. And I am. I genuinely am. I still think that we could be making films now that get people just as excited about the universe, about ourselves, about psychology, and really open and break open these doors and find new ways of thinking and being. And I think if the spiritual community can do that with their films, and the religious people could do it with their films, we should be able to do it with ours, because we actually have the foundation to say that we understand the world the best we can. And that should give people real hope. And that should give people real thought. And that's what I really hope to do with filmmaking, is giving people a new way of actually saying. So do you have another film? Because I'm going to bring...
No, go ahead and bring up the other one.
So the other one, this is actually a great film too. This has Joe Rogan in it. It's called DMT the Spirit Molecule. And
that one is really, I love that one, I think, because of I love it because of the psychedelic aspect. I'm a huge fan of psychedelics in terms of like what it does with your brain and all the untapped things that it kind of, puts you into in terms of like a dream state and things like that. So I'm still a huge fan of this. I'm not necessarily the like spiritual aspect of it, but the use of psychedelics, I think, is something that is important to still be looked at, actually.
I thought this was really a great film, and this is when I was still on my spiritual journey when I watched this, and I really did believe, like you were saying and what Joe Rogan was saying, that this was a key to unlocking a door to different dimensions, different realities. So I did take this stuff very seriously. It wasn't like I was just being hokey pokey and being like, oh, spirituality is going to save all, whatever. I was really looking into the science of spirituality and what are the doors, what are the mechanisms, like the doors of perception. How do you break free from the doors of perception? Are we limited to our reality here? And are there keys that can unlock us to reality? So again, What the Bleep Do We Know came around the same time I was watching the DMT Spirit. They didn't come out at the exact same time. I was saying for me, it was the same thing. It was like, how do we understand psychedelics to understand reality? How do we understand the mind? And to be honest, there's still a lot we don't know. And I think people think because you're a skeptic or an atheist that there isn't big questions still to be answered. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, there's still a whole realm of science that's out there that's still trying to explore what reality actually is, what the mind actually perceives to be true. And somehow people think that if you're a skeptic or atheist, there's this cold, hard, like, just emptiness of reality. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, there's so much we don't still understand about reality. Like, there's still the world that you're looking at right now, like literally right now, is not the world that actually exists. And what I mean by that is that, the world is black and white. We're seeing color because that's the way our eyes have adapted. There's so much information that we're not actually seeing. Our minds, our brains are only interpreting and filtering so much information. Like, there's so many things about the universe that we don't still know that we still need to ask questions of. And I sometimes this is the challenge I have with a lot of spiritual and religious people. I'm like, wouldn't you want to know and ask bigger questions than just believe what you think is true? I understand that it feels comfortable for them. And there's nothing, there's nothing I'm going to tell them that's going to make them change their mind, because I don't know if they really care about knowing the truth. But I think somehow they may feel like there's a fear that's there.
Well, they think they already know the truth. That's the difference. Right. They think that their truth claim is their truth, and that what we're doing is like blasphemy or whatever.
Right.
Like us, on this side saying, hey, there's still so much more to discover. They're on the other side of it saying, no, there's nothing left to discover. We already know everything, and you can just stop right here. You can stop right now, and there's nothing further that you need to do, other than the fact that we're learning even more about the capability of our brains and our brain and our brain cells, and how our neurons respond to all these different things, and how each one is actually way more significant. Like, I don't know. It really frustrates me when they say things like, no, you don't need to question things. It's like, yes, we do.
Yeah, we do. And it's just like, people have gotten so comfortable about thinking that they're right about what they are. And to me, I've seen so many things, and people will show me things and be like, well, Ben, have you seen that? And now, granted, I haven't seen everything, but people will show me things that I've seen over and over and over again. I'm like, I think people assume that somehow, especially when it comes to my life, that somehow I was different than them, that somehow I just wasn't open-minded enough. I don't think they understood the amount of time and effort that I took exploring my beliefs. And that if anyone was to ask me, in my early 20s that I would be a skeptic or atheist right now, and even questioning, spirituality and New Age, I would have been like, what are you talking about? I was deep into this stuff. I really wanted to know. I really wanted to prove it. And I think that some people have heard people talking, and they heard these spiritual leaders. They've heard of Deepak Chopra's and the Marianne Williamsons and the Pat Robertsons, and for whatever reason, they'd leave it at that. And I did too. I really didn't go in deep. I guess I didn't even think to question. I thought, well, it just made sense, and it sounded like they knew what they were talking about. But I think the difference is I really wanted to know if this was the truth, because I was so tired of being wrong about stuff. I was like, well, let me make sure that what I think is true. And most people they say they do this. They say they do this, but I can guarantee they don't do that. They will do whatever it takes to confine themselves in what it is that they're going to believe, and they think that anything other than this worldview is a threat, and it shouldn't be. You should not be afraid to question and be wrong and free yourselves. And I think that if some of these people did, they would see why a lot of us get really upset and why we're so much advocates for this, because you could see the power of that belief does to people. You could see how people, once they're entrenched in their belief, how hard it is for them to change their mind, how difficult it is. It's almost like they're a prisoner of their own beliefs. Which is again another great film that I want to talk about right now. Great segue, actually. I didn't mean to, but actually I'm just going to bring it up right now because this is just as important. And people think that, oh well, that belief is different than my belief, but it's not. The tenets of it may be different, but the psychological behavior of why you believe what you believe about it, whether you're a Christian, whether you're spiritual, whether you believe in Bigfoot, conspiracies, it's all the same tenets. That's what our film is basically exploring and talking about. So so I'm going to bring up another one by Alex Gibney that a lot of you have probably seen or heard, called "Going Clear," about Scientology. It's called, it even has the word prisoner of the prison of belief in the actual thing. If you get a chance to watch this one, please. This is such a phenomenally great documentary film. This is about Scientology. Let me see if I can pull this up. So this is about Scientology and the beginning of Scientology and how it came to be that Ron Hubbard, that's his name?
L. Ron Hubbard
started this organization, this fake religion basically, called Scientology, how he used to be a science fiction writer. And again, if you're a Christian or if you are a Muslim or if you are a believer, here's a great documentary film that you can watch that you don't have to change your mind about your belief, but ask yourself why these people believe so much in their religion. And do you really consider this to be a religion? Do you consider Scientology? Do you think that we should be respecting these people's beliefs and the damage and the harm and how these people act with their so-called belief system? And this is the whole reason why some of us get so pissed off and angry and so adamant about belief systems. Because some people are willing to hold on to this no matter what extent. And look how hard it is for them to change their mind. Now, ironically, some of these people did change their minds, which is great. But look at the damage that has to sometimes come with that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing. Not everyone that believes something is bad. But think about what you're supporting. Think about the people out there that is supporting your narrative and what you actually think. And another thing is that even if you're not doing harm, wouldn't you want to know if you're wrong? I don't know if generally people really wake up and say, I want to know if what I think and believe is wrong. I don't think they cared enough to. I don't know. I'm not other people.
Well, I
think after a while I'd want to know, is this the truth? And the problem is if they think it's the truth, they're just going to find evidence that confirms their biases. And that's the worst part about it is that they could just free themselves long enough to just take some time, take a couple months even. I mean, I'm not saying you have to take a bunch of time out of your life, but we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this, expressing this, and saying all these things over and over and over again if it wasn't important.
Right.
And some people are like, well, you're being dogmatic, you're being judgmental, No, I'm trying to free people's minds from a prison that they don't even realize that they're in, and they don't see that, and I understand that, and they don't want to believe that. They don't want to think that. I know people right now that are going to church trying to hear about atheism, and they're getting the wrong impression of what atheism actually is.
Yeah.
And then make all these different runarounds and excuses and circular arguments to support their beliefs. And it's like, if you just took the time to understand how you could be wrong and where you could be wrong about that, and not bullshit yourself and say, well, that's what I did. Because I guarantee you didn't. I guarantee you did not do that, because when I listen to some of the arguments that people make, these are arguments that have been addressed many, many times. So obviously they're not really trying to question what they think or believe. And documentaries, I think, when done correctly, have a great, great way of making you think differently about the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a part of, that's all about the part of the storytelling process, whether you're utilizing documentaries like all the ones we've just talked about, or books, even us, just you and I telling our stories. I think it's extremely powerful. And one of the best ways, I think, to get you to think outside your own box, honestly, it's just a matter of, I guess, asking yourself, what more can you know about a certain subject?
Exactly.
If there's a question that you have about like global warming, for existence, because or for instance, if you saw an Inconvenient Truth, right? So when that came out, everyone was like, oh, global warming, right? And then there were all these like anti-ads and things that, were out against it. But, it's one of those where it's like, okay, well, if you have more questions, find other documentaries or other pieces of information that can maybe answer those questions for you. Don't just stop at one thing, I guess, is the point.
And you got to be careful about which documentaries that you're watching, because a lot of times people are very manipulative in documentaries and they sound like they're credible. I will occasionally, once in a while, and I've done it many times, watch a documentary that has a different point of view just to see where that filmmaker's coming from. So one that I actually did watch, I believe this is the one that I watched, was from Steve Bannon, actually. It's called Generation Zero documentary. And again, there's a lot of things about this documentary I don't actually agree with. Here, I'm going to pull this up as we're talking, but there's a lot of things in this documentary I don't actually agree with. But again, every once in a while will take the time to watch a different point of view just to see where are they coming from first. What is the argument that they're trying to make, and how do I understand it the best that I can? Doesn't mean I can understand every argument. That's impossible. And then two, how do I know that my position is correct? And this is what's made me change my mind about a lot of things. This is why I'm not so dogmatic that I can't change my mind either, because again, there's times that people present things from the opposite side of point of view that I have, that even though I may not agree with like 80% of it, there's some of it that I'm like, that actually makes some sense too. And this is the reason why I bring this up too, because we live in a society where everybody just wants to believe whatever they want to believe about their political party. And I used to consider myself a liberal. Ironically, I consider myself a conservative growing up. But then I consider myself a liberal. And now I consider myself to actually be independent, like a classic liberal. But again, I question liberals too, because when I watch people's other points of view, there's times I'm like, wait a minute, the liberals need to understand that there's arguments conservatives has that are legitimate arguments. And I think we live in a society now where everybody's so dogmatic about their positions that they don't understand it. But I think documentaries have a great way of, one, manipulating people to believe propaganda bullshit, which goes back to a great documentary called... well, one, it's just that it can manipulate people. But two, you're getting into the mindset of people when you're watching a different point of view. And this is why I tell people, don't be afraid to watch something that has a different point of view than you. And and every once in a while, that's why I do it, because I'm like, what is their thinking? They're going to explain it in their films. Yeah. Now, it's your choice whether or not you're going to be a critical thinker and try to dissect it and figure out, is this truth, is this fact? It doesn't mean I expect documentary filmmakers to be perfect. I'm not a perfect documentary filmmaker by any means. I'm sure people will be critical of what I do. I'm seeing people do it now. Look at my fucking YouTube on a virus called Fear. I fucking bring up Waco, and everybody wants to defend Waco. This fucking crackhead on my YouTube channel was like trying to defend Waco the entire time. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to defend a cult leader who was a pedophile who fucking lit people on fire?
Right, and then because you bring up Hitler at all and his history, people think you're like defending Hitler.
Oh, or no, defending I'm defending Charles Manson or something.
Yeah, like because you showed a different side to them, that what actually happened to them that could have influenced their behavior, all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're pro-Hitler and you're pro-Charles Manson, and like, what the hell? I remember seeing those when we first released the film. It was so crazy. It's just crazy what people will take away from
which is really
stuff.
stupid because I fucking completely don't support Hitler. I completely don't support Charles Manson.
Right.
And in my film, I was just trying to explain how they probably got to their worldview and how fear fucked up their minds and what caught. And if people can't look at the monster and figure out how the monster became the monster, because it's easy for us to objectify that monster and say, oh, that's them and not us. But I'm like, if you're not looking at your own monster, you're just as capable of becoming the next monster. And this is the thing I keep trying to tell liberals over and over. And I keep bringing up the George Orwell's Animal Farm, that if you don't understand the process of how evil is committed in the world without fucking religion and all that other shit, but really looking at the process of the psychology of evil, you're just as prone to becoming evil yourself. And some people, some of the worst atrocities on this planet have happened from people that thought that they were doing good. Okay, so don't act like you're better than anybody else. You might think you're more moralistic, but if you truly can't understand a human being objectively, why they became that way, and if people like us can't express why they came that way, it's just like this whole punching of the fucking Nazis shit. You know, I see liberals right now still defending it's okay to punch a Nazi. Look, there's a lot of motherfuckers I'd love to punch in the face. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And what's to stop you from punching people in the face and then going and killing them and doing whatever else? You've got to think, just because you feel like that's the right thing at that moment. But I love watching Richard Spencer getting punched in the face. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. It doesn't mean that's the most effective way to do it. And if we are not any better than the enemies, then what the fuck are we? Like, this is why John McCain, when he stood up for waterboarding, said the same exact thing. Yeah, do we want to go around and be like every other people torturing people? No, we're supposed to be better than that. We're supposed to be better thinkers than that. There's supposed to be a moral value that we fucking have, but somehow we still think that animalistic fucking behavior is going to solve that. And I'm not saying there's not a time and place for it. If you're being attacked, you have a right to attack the person back. I get that. But people's freedom of speech is not a reason to punch them in the fucking face. It's not the right and moral thing to actually do when in a situation like that. Now, if the Nazi's trying to punch you in the face or trying to kill you, yes.
Now, what if he's being provocative? What if he's provoking you?
Look, you use the amount of force necessary to control the situation. So if he's using words, you use words. If he uses his fist, then use your fucking fist. I'm not saying to be completely passive.
I know.
I'm not a passive fucking person. I'd love to knock the fuck out of a lot of people, okay? But I've also learned a lesson from that by going to jail and punching people and you know what I'm saying? That's not the right way to handle the situation. You can't let people's emotional states, as fucked up and stupid as they are, affect your emotional well-being and how you react to the situation, because people are going to look down on you. It's not about you changing their mind. It's the public looking at you and how you're handling that.
I agree.
You can't use violence to solve everything all the fucking time. It doesn't mean you can't protect yourself. And people seem to not. But here's the thing. Again, people have not studied history, psychology enough to see what happens when one group of people that become violent and another group that tries to overthrow them becomes violent now has to use the same tactics, and now they're the new tyrant. Look at the French Enlightenment, okay?
Yeah.
They were overthrowing dictators. They became the fucking new bad guys. Fidel Castro. There's all these people in history that became revolutionaries that started off with small little things, and then they got into power, and then they became the new dictators. And I'm just as concerned in this country, the liberal left not understanding that, and not learning from history, watching documentaries like what we just talked about, and the histories that the lessons that we've learned throughout history, and then making the mistakes, and then thinking, oh, well, I have a better moral argument of it. You know, it's okay to just punch a Nazi. It's okay to deplatform people. Well, then it just shows that you're unintellectually and you're intellectually lazy. It means that you're not really understanding it. Because on the surface, it feels like, oh, that's a great argument. Like, I'd love to punch that guy in the face. I'd love to take fucking Richard Spencer's face and smash it into a fucking wall, right?
But you have to ask yourself why. He's just exercising his freedom of speech
He's
the
a
same way
fucking
that you
idiot.
are.
But again, is me doing that the right thing to do? Is that going to change anything? No, it's not the right thing to do. So I'm telling you, I'm not a pacifist. But again, if the bigger, broader picture is X, we need to focus on X. We're focusing on all Y, Z, and all these other things. And now here we are debating whether or not we should be punching a Nazi. What we should be doing is trying to debunk and discredit the Nazis for their fucked up worldview, their insecure, stupid, little-minded fucking worldview. And if you don't think the power of words don't matter and the power of nonviolence is, then go fucking check out a TED Talk. Go fucking listen to the podcast where I interview Sergei Popovic. Go talk to the people that are part of real revolutionary processes that you've never been a part of, especially you as a fucking American who's never been a part of a dictator dictatorship and never been part of any real revolution other than sitting behind your fucking Xbox, fucking making shit up on Halo all fucking day, okay? Go talk to the people out there who actually have to fight real people with real political power and had to deal with actual violence. They will tell you that your bullshit arguments are bullshit. And why is it that the most oppressed people will still fight for fucking freedom of speech? Why will the most oppressed people still fucking stand up against fucking violence? So you fucking shitty ass liberals out there who pretend to be liberals and aren't actually having liberal values, who still sit behind your fucking podcasts and your fucking stupid YouTube videos, you're just as much to blame for the bullshit that's going on there now. Go watch a fucking documentary and educate your fucking selves, because you're fucking embarrassing our fucking party. Anyways, that's my rant for the fucking liberals again. Again, shouldn't be talking to liberals about this shit. I should be debunking, right-wing politics, and I gotta sit here and debunk the fucking liberals too. It's a bunch of bullshit. Get your head out of your ass. I'm gonna finish this with a fucking Hitler documentary, and I want to tell you why. So, this one's called Triumph of the Will, and it's actually one of the most popular documentaries out there. And I really want to explain why I think that this is an important documentary. I honestly believe that this man is one of the most heinous, terrible people on this planet. Mm-hmm. And I think that this film does a great job of showing how good people would listen to such a heinous person. And I encourage people to watch this to show the mindset of the German people during this time and what they were telling their people, and how they were selling their people the things that they were telling, and the propaganda and the way and the techniques that they used in order to get this group of people to understand this man, okay? And I really encourage people to watch it and to understand this man for that exact reason, because we're seeing the same tenets being played out in this country, even though I think we're doing a much better job than Germany did back then. But I also think Hitler's a much smarter man than fucking Trump. As stupid as I fucking think that Hitler is, I mean, I don't like Hitler, but he's obviously more intelligent. He was more crafted and more manipulative than fucking Trump was. Okay? He still fucking knew and understand politics better. Trump is too fucking stupid to fucking gain that much power. Okay, he tries to, but we're also much smarter now. But what I'm trying to say is Hitler is a terrible, terrible person. And if we're not going to understand how good people in Germany would follow such a fucking terrible person, then we're going to just make the same fucking mistakes. And in that documentary, in this propaganda film that they had, allows you to see the mindset of what they were telling people. What was the mindset of why these people would follow someone like that? And if people just say, well, that's because they were sheep, because of whatever, then you're fucking totally missing the point. Then you're really not educating yourself. It's the same thing going on with ISIS right now in their propaganda films. Mm-hmm. People are drawn to these messages. People are drawn to these ideas. They're drawn to these ways of solving problems. This is how religion works. This is how religious movies and films, all these films we're talking about, especially that brings people to ideology, this is how they work. They claim to have solutions to these problems, and they seem like they make sense emotionally. And they tap into people's emotional well-being, and they do these things to manipulate people to get them to follow them. This film was a perfect example of how easily, I'm not gonna say easily, but how effectively this strategy actually worked. And I always tell people, look into the belly of the monster, go into the mind of the monsters to understand why and how they did what they did. And that's the only way you're gonna understand how we can make better decisions in society. And you never know, you might find monsters in your own fucking head that you need to be addressing, monsters that you need to be thinking about, and how you see the world. And I think these are great ways, and documentaries, I think, have a great way of telling us and letting us see the world in ways that, yes, may make us feel uncomfortable, may make us feel scared, may make us feel many different ways, maybe even happy or joyous. But they allow us to see the world and tell stories about us as human beings, our motives, our reasons for doing what they're doing. They make us see things in a new way. And if it doesn't do it for you, then fine. Go watch your whatever the fuck crap you watch on TV. I don't give a shit. But for me, I love nothing more than a great topic and a great film that makes me see something in a new way that I didn't know about, or I was like, wow, I was not aware of that. I didn't know that that's how that worked. I didn't know that's how these group of people thought. I didn't know how this is how politics worked, or the economy, or healthcare, or whatever it is. I mean, even let's say you're not even political. Let's say you're like, I don't like politics. Great. Do you love studying biology? Do you love studying nature? Do you love studying how to bake a cake? Like, there's so many great films out there for so many different types of people that make you see the world in a new way. There's fucking films about sushi, that are really, really good. And there's, that's what I'm trying to get at is that there's so many ways that if you just open your mind a little bit, and for all the people that consider me closed fucking minded, why don't you go through the history of the amount of films that I've seen from so many different positions, from so many different people, from so many different topics. I've been as open-minded as I could possibly be without my brains falling out. And I was willing to go into a world that I didn't know and change my life based off of it and even become a filmmaker myself. And I hope that people follow that journey and that if I continue to make films, that I can do the same thing for people. I think that's all I really wanted to do was do the same thing where people watch the film for the first time and like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Or I saw it in a new way. Or maybe just me seeing something. Like for me, I put patterns together. I'm like, okay, I see the pattern of this in psychology. I see the pattern of this in sociology. Maybe this would make a great film. I don't know. I maybe no one will ever hear of my films or whatever. But I try to get people to see things in a new way that's interesting. And I hope that people have that same experience because that's how I have it. When I watch a film, I'm like, wow, that just totally enlightened me to something completely new. You know what I mean? So even if just a couple people really just are like, that's fucking different. I didn't think of it that way. It just made you have a conversation. Then that's what I would love to fucking do. That's what I'm hoping to do. That this is the career that I get to have and that people will be able to enjoy it. So.
Okay.
Anyways, I think we'll start wrapping up. Any final comments?
One thing that I will say is it's okay if you want to watch crap. Sometimes I understand the need to want to escape.
No, it's not.
But sprinkle in a little bit of things that, you know, create wonder or create a sense of awe or create a sense of, you know, questioning. You know, don't be afraid to break outside of the monotony of, you know, just the same old, whatever's on TV. I'm just going to watch that. Challenge yourself to learn something and watch something new. That's what I would say.
But don't forget this. Whatever you put into your brain is what makes you who you are. It's like food, right?
Yeah.
You put crap into your brain long enough. Too much crap, you're going to become a crappy person. I mean, but it's real. We're a product of our environment. It's nature and nurture. But
I know.
You keep putting crap into your head, you're going to start thinking crap. I mean, ask any successful person in the world. What do they read? What are they watching?
I agree.
So for me, fine. If you want to watch crap, go ahead. I mean,
well, no, I'm saying here's the thing. I'm not. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of people watch what we call crap or whatever as a way to escape for a little while, to kind of shut their brains off because they've had a long day, a long week, a whatever. It's not. It's a form of escapism. Now, what I'm saying is that that's okay to a certain extent. Just make sure that you're also at least trying to break outside of that and challenging yourself, and that you're not just relying solely on escaping.
Say no to crap movies. Anyways, we're going to wrap this up, but if you're watching this on the rebroadcast, if you're watching on YouTube or iTunes or anything, give us some comments in the comment section below. Let us know what films you watch. If you got some films that you would recommend, I mean, there's so many more I wanted to say. We don't have enough time to go through.
Like
I mean, there's
Planet Earth.
There's so many great BBC documentaries that are out there. I mean, there's so many great films I really don't have time to go into. So
I know.
If you have some suggestions of some films that you like, or if you've seen some of the films that we just mentioned or talked about, put them in the comments. Let us know what's going on.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there. So, and if you guys got any show ideas too, if you guys got anything any people you'd like for us to bring on the podcast, if there's any topics you'd like to talk about, also let us know. That way, you know, we also want to engage with what you guys are wanting, what you want to do. And you know,
maybe we'll learn something ourselves.
Yeah, so if there's a show idea or show topic that you guys have, let us know. And if we can make it happen, we'll definitely try to make it happen. So,
okay.
Anyways, thank you guys for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share. If you're watching this video, please share and get the word out about us. So
like it a lot.
And like it, yes. So, all right. So anyways, I'm Ben Fama Jr.
And I'm Mesa Fama.
And we'll see you next week. Peace out.
See ya.
You've been listening to Reality Trip with Ben Fama Jr. Check out more great content by visiting benfarmerjr.com.